Good evening, everyone. I will call our meeting to order. His Worship is attending an event in Midland and will be joining us probably in 15 to half an hour. So this Special Committee of the Whole meeting is related to our budget for 2018. And it's nice to see that we do have public here wanting to understand our budget, and certainly will be given an opportunity to ask questions, but only at the end of the Treasurer's report. So I will pass it over to Carrie, and she has a presentation, and this, of course, is our second draft.
Thank you,
Yes,
Deputy.
Madam Clerk.
Sorry to interrupt, Carrie. We could just go through the items to approve the committee of the whole agenda.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. I have approval of the agenda. Do have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor LaRose, seconded by Councillor Rawson. All those in favor? Carried. Declaration of pecuniary interest, either now or at the time the subject is brought forward. And number 4 is our public consultation, and this is the presentation of our 2018 draft number 2 presentation. So I will turn it over to our Treasurer, Carrie Robillard.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Dubo. Welcome, council members, staff, and members of the public. Tonight I will present our draft 2018 operating and capital budget, the potential tax impact, a brief look at some historical financial information, and highlights from our 2-year capital budget. We have a lot of information to get through in the next hour and still leave enough time at the end for a question and answer period for our residents. Senior managers are here to answer any questions from the public that are specific to their department. So I'll start by briefly describing our budget process to date, where we began, and how we got to where we are tonight. So in June of this year, 2017, our 2018 budget guidelines and objectives and our 2018 budget timeline were presented to Council, and calculated municipal price index of 2.2%. 2.2% was approved by Council as the guideline for staff to come in their budget. In July, then it was ratified by Council. The 2018 budget guidelines and objectives. In August, I gathered responses to the Council and Senior Management budget questionnaires, and as well in September, we initiated a new part of the budget process and initiated a public budget survey via SurveyMonkey. The CAO and myself met with each senior manager to review the draft budget documents, and an all-management meeting was then held to review the draft 10-year capital plan. The senior management team then met as a group in September to review the 2018 budget draft 1. In October, a special committee of the whole budget meeting took place on October 18th to review draft number 1 of the town's 2018 operating budget, 10-year capital plan, and the departmental budget goals and objectives, and the potential tax impact. At that meeting, the overall potential tax impact came in at, for the town portion, at 2.12%, which was within Council's guidelines of the municipal price index of 2.2%. Which brings us to this evening in November, our public consultation to receive input on the 2018 budget, draft number 2, to be followed by a question and answer period with the senior management team. Our next meetings in this process, there's a special committee, the whole budget meeting, immediately following this public consultation. There's another special committee of the whole budget meeting to recommend adoption of the budget on November 15th at 7 p.m. And then there's a regular council meeting to consider the adoption of the budget on November 22nd at 7 p.m. I'll just briefly go through the results of our 2018 public budget survey. So there was 36 online responses and 9 manual responses. All 45 complete responses were published on our October 18th budget meeting agenda. But briefly, the questions that were asked: how many people live in your household? And 56% of the respondents lived in a 2-person household. What is the age of the person filling out the survey? 33% of respondents were 65 to 74 years of age. How do you receive information regarding the town's budget and budget process? And 47% responded through the mayor's weekly email message. Question number 4 was listing the town's services, and please indicate if you feel the service levels should be enhanced, resulting in a higher tax increase, maintained, resulting in a moderate tax increase, or reduced, resulting in no tax increase. 53%, under the enhanced responses, 53% replied economic development and 39% replied roads. Under maintained services, 92% replied fire services and 78% replied police services. Under reduced, 33% replied municipal law enforcement services and 31% replied rec programs. Question number 5, what top 3 capital projects should the town consider during the 2018 budget process? The top 3 responses were Main Street reconstruction and other road repairs, sidewalk repairs, and town appearance related to facilities and grounds. Number 6, given all the programs and services provided by the town, how would you rate the value you are receiving for your tax dollars? And 47% replied good. Which statement best represents your position regarding taxation? 47% of the respondents supported a moderate tax increase. Top 3 suggestions you would make in order to improve town services were more communication, road repairs, and increased by law enforcement. And the last question was, please provide additional comments for the mayor, council, and management to consider for the 2018 budget. And they were related to reducing tax increases and road maintenance. So how did we get here? The 2017 town levy is broken down in between operating and capital, and the total 2017 town levy was $8,226,094. On July 19th, as I mentioned, Council approved our 2018 budget goals, objectives, and guidelines, and directed staff to come in with their draft budget at the municipal price index calculated at 2.2%, or a $215,593 increase. So the draft number 1 that was presented on October 18th at the special budget meeting, special committee of the whole budget meeting, did just that. The increase came in at $207,650 with a 2.12% tax impact. Following that meeting, changes were recommended by council, as well as some changes that staff had requested based on new information that we received since the last draft. And draft number 2 this evening is coming in at a total of $8,418,516, which is an overall increase of $192,422, or a 1.96% potential tax impact. And compared to draft number 1, that's a further reduction from draft number 1 of 0.16%, or $15,228. Major drivers of the operating changes over the prior year annually typically are related to salaries, wages, council, and other remuneration and benefits, hydro, preventative road maintenance program, insurance, economic development, and potential service delivery enhancements. Related to the potential service delivery enhancements, there was a net reduction of $154,630 to reallocate the town's capital investment into the operating budget to fund potential service delivery enhancements approved by council. I'll briefly go through the changes that were made by Committee of the Whole and staff at the last special budget meeting to draft number 1, and how we got today to our draft number 2 being presented at 1.96%. So the operating changes directed by Committee of the Whole was an overall decrease of $8,978 in taxation funding, and that was related to reducing CDC streetscaping by $5,000 and amending the library contribution to a 2.2% increase over the prior year, and that resulted in a reduction of $5,978. There was also an inclusion of a $2,000 budget line for Crime Stoppers. And in addition to that, staff made operating net changes, decreasing taxation by $6,250, and they were related to the reduction of the economic development contribution by $12,500, an increased RCS part-time staffing costs by a net change of $6,250, and that was to amend the budget for the existing staffing profile and employment grants related to Parks and Wharf, seasonal employees, to reflect what's actually been happening in terms of hours worked and to match the actual operating season. Also included in those changes to operating, we amended the transit revenue and expenses by a net increase in revenue of $14,000, and that was based on some further discussions with the town of Midland, as well as information that the Director of Public Works reported to Committee of the Whole in his October 25th transit agreement report. The increase related to the increased net revenues related to transit were offset by a corresponding reduction to the transfer from transit reserve that was originally in draft number 1 of the operating budget. The capital 2018 net changes by Committee of the Whole. The fire tanker replacement project was deferred, and it was amended to become a 3-year financed project rather than originally presented as a 2-year capital project. That resulted in a taxation reduction of $64,166. Another capital project, Downtown Community Improvement Plan and Design Guidelines, was removed. That resulted in a taxation reduction of $30,000. And the Navy Lane Pump Station Upgrades Retrofit Construction Project was amended to reflect an increase of to amend it from the original $410,000 project to approximately a $918,000 project, which increased wastewater DCs, and there was a slight reduction in the allocation to wastewater utility rates. Another change by Committee of the Whole at the last budget meeting was to include the amphitheater shelter and move it from 2020 project to 2018, resulting in a taxation increase of $40,000. And the total taxation reductions, I'll just point out, were offset with corresponding debt reduction to the Main Street reconstruction project, so that our capital-based budget remained at the $1,150,000 taxation required for 2018. Capital 2019 net changes by committee of the whole, again, was reflected with the deferral of the 3-year project for the fire tanker replacement. Committee of the whole also directed consideration to defer the replacement of a 1-ton pickup truck with dump box, vehicle number 22, and that capital project has been deferred to 2020, resulting in a taxation reduction of $50,000, and that was based on further staff investigation and discussion. (2018) capital changes by staff. Based on Committee of the Whole report that the Director of Recreation and Community Services provided on October 25th, the Arena Rubber Floor Phase 2 project was amended to include an estimated carry forward, as well as reduce the taxation portion required, a reduction of $25,716, and that was based on the tenders received and outlined in that report. We also recently, since our last meeting, have received notice from the government related to our OSIF formula-based subsidy, and it was increased in 2018 by $39,894, so that was reflected in our 2018 capital budget. We also reallocated $214,000 in change of our subsidy funding from 2019 to 2018 for Main Street reconstruction, with a corresponding reduction to the debt for Main Street, and that was related to balancing our 2019 capital-based budget to $1,150,000 as well, so that Council can consider adopting and approving and adopting a 2-year capital budget in 2018 and 2019. Capital 2019 net changes by staff. Again, the increased taxation related to Main Street, as I mentioned, was to bring the capital-based budget up to our capital tax levy that we do have, $1,150,000. As well, there was a decrease, a net decrease of $114,166. Related to changes made by Committee of the Whole, and again, it was offset to the Main Street debt related to the reconstruction project. Other capital changes by staff were outside of the 2-year capital budget. But the RCS vehicle replacement that was done in 2019, basically each vehicle replacement after that in each year was deferred by 1 year as well. So in 2020 and 2021, they have been deferred by 1 year as well. The replacement of carpets at Town Hall, further information was received from a contractor based on their condition, and that capital project was deferred as well. The OSIF formula-based subsidies, we did receive notification of 2019 and a proposed amount for 2020, so those changes were also made in the capital plan to increase the OSIF formula-based subsidies. So again, as I mentioned, tonight, the draft budget number 2, after making all those changes at the last special budget meeting, operating levy comes in at $6,714,345. Capital investment is $1,704,171 for a total town tax levy of $8,418,000 and change, which, as I mentioned, is an increase of $192,422, or a 1.96% potential tax impact. Along with the town tax levy, we've got an OPP cost increase related to our OPP contract, and it is increasing $22,658 over the prior year, or a 0.23% potential tax impact. Our total tax levy is just over $10 million, an increase of $215,080 over last year. So total town and OPP impact would be 2.19%. The 2018 budget, the tax-supported budget, the 2017 versus the 2018 budget, and it's summarized by section. So Finance and Corporate Services is looking at a $50,441 change over last year, or 1.4% budget increase. Transportation and Environmental Services is $82,509 budget change over the prior year, or a 3.1% budget increase. Recreation and Community Services, $45,362 increase over the prior year, or a 4% budget increase. Planning and Development, $5,876 budget increase over the prior year, or a 1.5% budget change. And Library is at $8,234 budget increase, or 2.2%. So the total tax-supported budget is $192,422, which is a budget increase of 2.3%, and that's reflected in a potential 1.96% tax impact. The 2018 total budget, including tax-supported and rate-supported services, which would include water, wastewater, the wharf, and building department, bumps up our year-over-year budget increase from $192,422. If you include those 4 rate-supported divisions, it increases to $372,639 increase, or a 3.1% budget increase. Again, as I mentioned, some of the corporate-wide major drivers of our budget changes annually impact our operating budget. So part-time wages have been impacted related to the increase to the minimum wage rates that are anticipated January 1st. Benefits includes a 7% increase in the group benefit package. Overall increase related to salaries, wages, remuneration is just over $100,000. And utilities such as telephone, hydro, gas, and water is estimated at a 13% budget increase, or about $150,000. So now the 2018 tax-supported budget, I will briefly go through each section and the divisions related to the summary that I just completed. But basically, Recreation and Community Services is broken down into Recreation Administration, Arena Parks, Recreation Programming, Events, Tourism, and Tourist Information, Heritage and Museum. So again, as I mentioned, the total budget increase for all of those divisions is broken down but it totals $45,362, or a 4.01% budget increase. The 2018 rate-supported budget related to the wharf is a budget increase over the prior year of almost $24,000, or a 24% budget increase. Major drivers related to those budget increases under Recreation and Community Services. Under Recreation Administration, there are increased lottery licensing revenues being budgeted based on historical actuals that we have been collecting in those revenues. Under Arena, there's increased hydro costs. There's also reduced debt repayment. Under Parks, there's increased part-time wages and benefits to accurately reflect the operating season. And under Rec programs, there's increased costs related to, as I mentioned, the minimum wage and operating hours. Related to the rate-supported major drivers of the budget changes under the wharf, there's increased part-time wages to correctly reallocate RCS attendant seasonal positions from the Tourist Information Center to the wharf. So those are not new positions, but they're newly structured in that those positions work at both facilities. So we've done the analysis and allocated a portion of those employees to both of those cost centers, being the Parks and under taxation, and the wharf under wharf rates. Under Planning and Development, which includes municipal law enforcement, under taxation, and building under the rate-supported budget. Again, the tax-supported budget increase is $5,876, or a 1.54% budget increase. And the building rate-supported function, there's an increase of $2,040, or a budget increase of 1.01%. So overall, Planning and Development is looking at a $7,900 budget increase, or a 1.36% budget increase. Some of the major drivers related to those budget changes, there was an increase for economic development contribution of $12,500 in 2018. And under the rate-supported building department, there's increased permit fees budgeted, and that's resulting in an estimated transfer of $17,000 and change to the Building Life Cycle Reserve Fund. Under Transportation and Environmental Services, the tax-supported budget includes transit, public works, and roads. The budget increase over the prior year is $82,509, or a 3.13% budget increase. And under the 2018 rate-supported budget under T&E, that includes water and wastewater, there's a $154,494 budget increase, or 4.63%. Overall, T&E total budget increase over the prior year is $237,000, or 3.97%. Some of the major drivers related to the tax-supported budget changes, there was an increase to the Public Works Vehicle and Equipment Reserve. As well, there was an increase to the transit net expense of 2.2%. Sorry, again, as I mentioned, there was an increase related to the revenues, and the original transfer from the transit reserve was reduced accordingly by $13,500. There was an increase related to the municipal price index of 2.2% related to the preventative road maintenance program. There was also, under the Roads Division, an increase for streetlights, hydro, and maintenance costs. Under the rate-supported budget, the major drivers for those changes, under water, there is increased revenue budgeted, resulting in a higher transfer to the Water Life Cycle Reserve Fund by almost $29,000. And under wastewater, there was increased revenue budgeted. There was increase for hydro costs, as well as an increase for an anticipated start to the debenture payment related to the sewage treatment plant expansion. Under Finance and Corporate Services, which includes council, administration, income related to grants, interest penalties, supplementary property taxes, write-offs related to rebates and refunds for property taxes, as well as payments in lieu of property taxes. There's also the transfer to the Asset Management Reserve, contributions to other organizations, the fire department, as well as the capital program. So the 2018 budget, compared to the prior year, is higher by $50,441, or a 1.36% budget increase. Under administration, I'll just point out that the increase related to administration and the decrease related to the capital program, again, is the reallocation of town resources from capital investment to operating related to the service delivery, potential service delivery enhancements approved by council. Some of the tax-supported major drivers for those budget changes, there's increased computer expenses being budgeted for support agreements related to proposed new software. There's reduced consulting expense for 2018 projects. There's also an increased building maintenance budget to reflect historical actuals. There's an increase related to, request related to the emergency management program for notification and response programs, as well as public education and program development. There's an increased corporate contingency based on anticipated cost increases related to Bill 148 legislative changes. Under corporate miscellany, there's an increased transfer to asset management reserve by the municipal price index of 2.2%. As well, as I mentioned, the reallocation of the capital investment from capital to operating. Also in corporate miscellany is the increased library contribution of $8,234, or 2.2%. Under fire, there's reduced fire permit revenue based on lower fees approved by council. Now I'll just review some of the financial history that we typically look at during the budget process, and that's our debt repayment history. So over the last 8 years, including the 2018 budget, debt repayment has been $6,146,016, or an average average debt repayment per year of about $768,252. When you compare that to the town's annual debt repayment limit, as set by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, our limit is $3.2 million and change per year. So we're at 30% of our legislated limit. Again, just another snapshot of our tax levy for 2017 compared to 2018. So $8.2 million in 2017 for operating and capital, compared to 2018 draft number 2 of our tax-supported budget at just over $8.4 million, a budget increase of $192,422 with a potential tax impact of 1.96%. If we look over the past 7 years as in terms of overall tax impact and town-only tax impact, over the past 7 years, the overall tax impact, which includes the town, OPP, county, and province, for the past 7 years, the average per year has been 0.77%. And if you look at the town-only tax increase for operating capital and OPP for the past 7 years, it's been an average of 2.2% per year. The 2018 draft budget, including OPP, operating capital and OPP, is at 2.2%. Our grant history over the last 7 years, our 2018 estimated grant is just over $4.3 million, which includes the Main Street subsidies that were deferred from 2017 to 2018. And if you include that with the prior 7 years, so the 8-year cumulative grant funding the town has successfully obtained is just over $28.8 million, or an average of $3.6 million per year. And now I'll quickly review the draft number 2, 2018 and 2019 capital program. The tax-supported capital projects over the past 8 years is just over $8.8 million. And that averages out annually to just over $1.1 million. And as I mentioned, the 2018 draft capital base budget is $1,150,000. If we look at our current debt reserves and reserve fund balances available for our 2018 and 2019 capital program, our internal debt related to the Town Hall, Public Works and Roads Division related to Thompson Road and Fuller Avenue project, a Main Street lighting and paving project, a Fuller Avenue bike lane and Champlain Road, as well as water for Robert Street West water main, excuse me, as well as for the arena. Our current internal debt is almost $3.5 million. As well, we anticipate 2018 opening balance for our Infrastructure Ontario debenture related to the fire hall and aerial truck will be just over $1.1 million, as well as our Infrastructure Ontario debenture related to the sewage treatment plant expansion at just over $9.1 million. So our total debt is $13.7 million estimated at the end of 2017. When you compare that to the town's 2017 annual debt limit set by the ministry, which is almost at $40.7 million, compared to our current estimated debt balance of $13.7 million, we're at 34% of our legislated debt limit. And again, as I mentioned earlier, our annual repayment, our debt repayment limit is at 30% of our legislated limit. Our anticipated opening balances for 2018 for our reserves and reserve funds. Our reserves related to administration, fire and emergency, planning and development, public works, recreation and community services, capital asset management, as well as anticipated capital carry forwards, and our reserve funds related to our building department, our water life cycle reserve fund, our wastewater life cycle reserve fund, our cash in lieu of parkland reserve fund, our development charges reserve fund, as well as industrial land development reserve fund, library fundraising, and gas tax rebate. Our total estimated balances, opening balances for 2018 for reserves and reserve funds is almost $5.8 million. And I will note that that's a decrease from our 2016 draft audited financial statements of $8.4 million, and that's related to reserves required to fund our Main Street reconstruction project, among some other projects in 2017. And that's related to the deferral of the Main Street reconstruction project from 2017 to 2018. So our total capital budget from all funding sources for 2018, transportation environmental is at $12.3 million. RCS is at $1.3 million. Finance and corporate services is about $273,000. Planning and community development is almost $132,000, and the library is $6,500. So that's a total capital budget for 2018 from all funding sources, which includes taxation, utility rates, subsidies, debt, carry forward, reserves. Total for 2018 is slightly over $14 million. Our 2018 capital budget, funded by taxation only. For transportation and environmental, it's about $464,000. For RCS, it's $347,000. For FCS, it's $243,000, and P&D, it's $95,000, for a total taxation-funded capital-based budget of $1,150,000. The bulk of that, transportation environmental, is 87.5% of our 2018 taxation capital budget. The Recreation and Community Services 2018 capital budget, which represents about 10% of the town's total 2018 capital budget. For wharf, parks, arena, trails, museum, and the curling club, total is $1.34 million. I won't go through each project in each of the sections, 2018 and 2019 capital budget, but I guess I'll just highlight some of the larger ones, the total project cost, and also identified as the taxation portion of that project. So related to recreation and community services, we've got McGuire Playground replacement of $150,000, structural on the concrete wharf of $450,000, as well as pickleball court construction of $135,500. The tax required for the 2018 RCS capital program is about $347,000, or 30% of the town's tax-supported 2018 capital budget. For 2019 under RCS, The largest capital project in 2019 is related to Martin Valley Park of $205,000. As well as the arena roof replacement transfer to reserve of $51,000. So for 2019 for RCS, total capital projects of $479,500, of which $329,000 is tax supported. The 2018 capital budget for planning and development is $131,694, which represents 1% of the town's total 2018 capital budget. In 2018, $75,000 project for zoning bylaw comprehensive review and update. So the total P&D capital program for 2018 is $131,694, of which $95,000 is tax supported, which is 8% of the town's tax supported capital budget. In 2019, there's three smaller projects. The $50,000 project is related to the secondary plan, Upper Main Street. Total projects for P&D in 2019 are $75,000, of which all of them, $75,000, are tax supported. For transportation and environmental services, the 2018 capital budget for Public Works Roads Division, wastewater, water, for Public Works vehicle and equipment, as well as environmental, it's a total of $12.3 million. Again, as I mentioned, it represents the bulk of our total 2018 capital budget, 88%. Some of the larger projects included in 2018 for T&E, obviously, is the Main Street reconstruction at $10.4 million. As well as sewage treatment plant expansion and financing of $272,000. Navy Lane Pump Station, $918,842. And the new salt dome for the roads division at $250,000. So again, the total T&E capital program for 2018 is $12.3 million, of which $464,000 is tax supported, representing 40% of the town's tax supported capital budget for 2018. For 2019, T&E projects, there's Main Street reconstruction for $400,000, as well as LED streetlight retrofits for $100,000. So the 2019 capital program for T&E is $960,000 in total, of which $543,000 is tax supported. Finance and Corporate Services 2018 capital budget is for the fire department for vehicle and equipment, as well as corporate IT and equipment. It totals $273,334, representing 2% of the town's total 2018 capital budget. The total projects for FCS in 2018, again, as I mentioned, $273,000 and change, of which $243,000 and change are tax supported, representing 21% of the town's tax supported capital budget. So again, that's for the tanker replacement, multi-year project, as well as corporate computer hardware and software for $60,000. In 2019, FCS has total capital projects of $203,000 and change, of which $202,000 is tax supported. We've got the replacement of a support vehicle in the fire department, the tanker replacement, year 2, transfer to reserve, as well as corporate computer hardware and software. The library 2018 capital program, total $6,500, which represents 0.05% of the town's total 2018 capital budget. 2 small projects related to replacement of the exterior door, as well as repair and replace eaves trough. The library's 2019 capital project was a small project related to the desks and the workstations for $1,978. And I was advised yesterday by Cindy at the library that the library board has requested removal of that capital project. So we can do that for draft number 3. So my final slide is basically the town's 10-year capital funding summary for information. So from 2018 to 2027, this particular funding summary identifies the total capital program for each of the next 10 years, totaling almost $33.9 million, as well as the source of funding for each of those years. And the actual 10-year capital plan, detailed, has been published on the agenda for the committee of the whole section part of this meeting, if anybody wanted any other detailed information related to the 10-year capital plan. But it basically does show that in 2018, our total capital program is just over $14 million, of which $1,150,000 is coming from taxation. And in 2019, our total capital program is just over $1.7 million, of which $1,150,000 is coming from taxation. And that's the end of my operating and capital draft number 2 budget summary.
Thank you, Carrie. An extensive report for sure. I'd like to welcome Ms. Worship and Councillor Levy to the table. I guess now is an opportunity for the public to ask a question of our treasurer. Yes, please state.
Last budget meeting, there was to be additional information regarding the administration building maintenance. Was that
Thank you for the question. Carrie couldn't hear you. Could you stand, please? And
last budget meeting, there was information to come regarding the administration building maintenance. I think it was to do with janitorial, etc. And they said the information would be available tonight.
I apologize, I don't recall that particular comment from the last meeting.
Yes, page 294. It has the administration building maintenance increased by $9,000, and one of the councilors had questioned it. And the answer was there would be information.
perhaps the councillor that asked the question could refresh our memories. Who was it? Councillor Rawson, would you like to bring us up to speed?
Well, I did ask the question, but I believe the CEO spoke that this is part of the service delivery review process, and that he was going to be bringing that up part of the service delivery review. And I think Jeff may have something about that.
If you could comment, please.
Through you, Madam Chair. So certainly this is being discussed and debated as part of the service delivery review. it is something that the service delivery review consultants are looking at today. I say today meaning as part of the project. What's been budgeted is status quo, so in other words, to maintain the contracting out of janitorial services. But what I can say is that the consultants are giving serious consideration to changing or amending that model. So in terms of the additional information, I apologize if I said it was coming tonight, because certainly that was not my intent. The service delivery review final report is not being presented until the 22nd of November, at which point I'll be in a better position to speak to the specifics, other than to say I know the consultants are giving serious consideration to changing the current model.
Thank you, Jeff, and I do believe the treasurer had her hand up as well.
Just to add on to the CAO's comment and the increase that was discussed at the last budget meeting. So again, it does not include anything coming from the service delivery review. The $9,000 increase in the administrative building maintenance budget was related to bringing it up to a level that we've actually been incurring in terms of the building maintenance costs, as well as an increase related to corporate-wide window cleaning that had never been budgeted for. Correct?
Yes, that's correct, as well as potential increased costs due to the increase in minimum wage from the contracted service delivery review, contracted quote updating on expenses for upcoming year is that they anticipate costs increasing as well, but that is all something that's being considered as part of the service delivery review.
Thank you. Are there further questions? Dennis? Yes?
Madam Chairman, I appreciate the opportunity to ask questions tonight. Actually, I have two, if I may.
Yes.
The first one, through you to Roger, particularly at the beginning of your presentation and on a number of slides here, you talked about the impact of increased utility rates. At page 13, you said utilities are estimated net budget increase of 13%. Or $150,000, and you make comment here on a couple of occasions that the major drivers are increased hydro costs. What happened to this hydro rates are going down by 25%? The gas rates are going south; they're going a little down. We control the cost of our own water. The only other item here is telephone. I'm just curious as to how. Having said that, the budget reflects an increase of 13%, and 3 of those indicated drivers were actually reduced costs.
Thank you for your question. The town does control the water costs. However, the town does have an annual increase related to water and wastewater in its own financial plan for the water and wastewater divisions. So we do see an annual increase related to those services. As far as hydro goes, each facility is different, but I do know from a usage standpoint, we're using more hydro. So our costs and our budget is reflecting what our historical actuals have come in at and our analysis of those costs for 2018 to budget properly for them. So I do know for facilities such as the new sewage treatment plant, the hydro usage has increased, therefore the hydro costs have increased. I do know from the perspective of the arena, so again, maybe the costs, overall costs may be reducing, but as far as our facilities, in some of our facilities in particular, the usage is going up to accommodate the service.
Dennis, you had a second question?
I do. Okay, on that one. The principal reason I came here tonight, I'll form it in the form of a question, but there has been some chatter around town about this new game in town called pickleball. And I just want to briefly comment that just in case those honored councilors around the table haven't heard, this is something that has really caught on with particularly our seniors in our community. And I'm here on my own because I'm personally participating in that. And I don't look it, but I am in the senior group. So at page 37, there's a line item called pickleball court construction. I hear that that's supposed to be down at Dwyer Park, of $135,000. First off, it sounds like a whole lot of money, $135,000, to build a pickleball court. But whether that's the price or not, I just want to advocate that personally, on behalf of all those who have lined up and
Further, I think, Carol, you had a question? Yes.
Utilities, under public works, water, account number 1-4-4300-2030, 22 Centennial Drive. The budget went up 45.2% from 9505 to 13.8. Could you explain to me why?
In 2018, that was to correct budget, what was budgeted for 2017. So we under budgeted in 2017. And again, we do a historical analysis each year. And in 2018, we corrected the budget. Brian?
Brian? For 2017?
That's correct. You had budgeted 9506. You spent 7408 to date. So it tells me you haven't overspent. That's why
We still have 2 months.
asking why it's so much higher for 2008.
It would have been based on actuals for the whole year in 2016, as well as anticipated costs to year end for 2017. And then we bring 2018 budget in line with that analysis.
So it's a great deal more expense that you know of for 2017.
Yes, and hydro billing, typically, hydro billing is always behind schedule. So even though we may have printed these actuals probably around, with the end of September being input, billing in our system is so lagging from hydro that we're probably only seeing costs up until July or August.
Question? Electric bargaining, account number 2212, still with the same word. Is this a yearly expense? Expenses going up 400%.
Sorry, did you say bargaining?
Collective bargaining, 1-4-1200-2212.
It's not an annual expense. I think maybe the CAO could elaborate, but it is only when negotiations are occurring in like every third year or so, I think.
So we had a great deal of expense in 2017 versus your budget, but I'm questioning why is it going up 400% for 2018?
Through you, Madam Chair, the 2017 expense was one collective agreement that was ratified. The 2018 proposed budget is for a second and separate collective agreement that, although work will begin in 2017, we've actually not levied the dollars and collected it from a taxation perspective. So it is not an annual expense. It is dependent upon when contracts expire and when that collective bargaining is required.
Thank you. Mike, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm trying to streamline.
public meeting on the 21st. The contractors will be here, and I think there will be discussion that will take place after that. Not at the moment, but this is the second draft. We still have further drafts to come forward.
In the past, and I'm talking directly to you,
Yeah.
I've done a lot of research. As we've done road construction throughout our community, people's property, right?
Mike, I can't answer that question. I'm sure that there have been insurance claims over the years that have come forward that perhaps have been settled, but as I said, at this particular juncture, we are waiting for our public meeting, and all of us will understand fully what the contractor is bringing forward and how that will be unfold, and then after that, council will have further discussion. That's as far as I can go.
We were listing on training. Are we trying to find out earlier? The meeting has it changed from November the 16th to
21st, I do believe. Yes, there's a large event happening on our main street on the 16th, and it would be not prudent for council to have a special meeting, so that's why it was changed. I don't know if anyone else has anything further to add to that. Are there further questions from any? Yes.
Sorry. Through you, Madam Chair. Sorry, are you referring to 2017 or 2018 budget?
I'm talking about both budgets are $23,500, which is fine. I'm just wondering, there's no cost yet, so I don't know how we arrived at our 23.5 if they haven't billed us for 17.
We do a tender for services every 5 years, and we did hire an auditor who has offered to charge the same rate every year. And no, we haven't been billed yet for.
That's super. It's based on tender, so it's not run all over the place. You answered the question by your attorney, yeah. Two others, thoughts?
Through you, Madam Chair. The budget line actually used to be Emergency Operations Center, and it was for minor materials and supplies for our Emergency Operations Center. And it was proposed to be changed this year to Emergency Management Program to fund notification and response applications that we are implementing with our emergency management team, as well as preventative education and programming and program development related to our emergency management plan.
Okay, so that's just kind of like an advertising program to let the public know what's going on, or this is all internal?
The fire chief could elaborate on that. Thank you.
So it has to do a bit of both. It will be some internal training and development of staff and alternates for positions in the event that the town has to declare. But it's also part and parcel of our public education program that we need to do with the public. And that budget was higher than it currently shows and then was reduced over the years. So we're looking to bring that back up so that we have a more consistent funding model for that program, which is a legislated program from the province.
Carrie, can you respond to that?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, corporate contingency is budgeted annually and does encompass some budget items that are not budgeted for that could actually occur. So, for example, sick leaves are not budgeted for. So if that were to happen, we do have funds. That's just one example. Council in the past has authorized staff to fund certain items through corporate contingency, but we don't do it until the very end of the year if we have to. So it's the last resort that we will touch that corporate contingency. Again, through you, Madam Chair, you're referring to 2017?
I'm referring to 2017, yeah.
Correct. That they're payment in lieu of taxes that are all paid by the final tax due date, but they all come through one line, and then we allocate them to each of those payment in lieu properties.
Okay. Because there I'm getting to my in lieu. My next question is in grant in lieu. The budget is zero, but we've got in $102,000. So I'm assuming that's why we just haven't allocated.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I'm fine with that. My question is, our costs are budgeted at 100,000, or our budget is 175,000.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, there was. So typically, our policy period runs September to September. So we budget 9 months at our current rate, and then we do an anticipated increase for the new policy for October, November, December. But this year, we actually did a 15-month policy so that we could get it to the end of December, and they gave it to us at the same rate.
There are some bonuses sometimes. Mike?
As you brought it up, a two-part question about classy.
comments. Carrie, in transit, I mean, I think when we all got involved in transit, we knew up front that it was not profit-bearing at the end of the day. There isn't a transit organization in the province of Ontario that's probably breaking even. It is a service to the residents of our community, and I think that's what our intent was. It's not to it is available to the entire community. I think our ridership has increased. I haven't seen ridership figures for this last couple of months, but anyway, Brian or Carrie, would you like to add to that?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, I can respond to all the comments on the revenues. A lot of the revenues that you're seeing in the to-date actuals are delayed, so we're still waiting to receive a lot of our portion of the fare revenue from the town of Midland. We do have a 50-50 split with the town of Midland, so from my understand, we're behind by a couple of quarters, I believe. So those are not reflected in the to-date actuals. And under the subsidies, we do receive an annual gas tax grant from the Ministry of Transportation. We've seen a portion of it apportioned under the transit grants to date as 20,000, but our grant is upwards of 80,000. So that hasn't been apportioned as well. So a lot of the actuals to date are not reflective of what we're going to see at the end of the year. And I can confirm that from the start of the transit service, from February of 2016, we started out at a couple of hundred passengers in the month of February, and now we've kind of plateaued out at about 2,000 a month. So we have seen a growth in the transit service.
Thank you, Brian. I do think, Councillor Levy, you had a question?
Oh, I just wanted to add in regards to the $2 fare that I think Mike raised, is that the commitment was made when this was started that for the initial 2 years there'd be no discussion of an increase. Is that correct, Brian?
Yes, there hasn't been any discussions to date on an increase. That would be tied in with our operator, the town of Midland. Our existing agreement allows us to change rates midterm if both sides agree. And as council is, I'm sure, aware that the town of Midland is undergoing a transit service review, and I'm sure that one of those topics that they're going to discuss is exactly that.
Inquiry. Are there further questions from the public? Seeing none, thank you very much for attending this portion. And of course, we do have further portions on our agenda. Your Worship, did you want to take over?
No, actually, thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize to everybody for being late. I had to represent our town at a function earlier, but it's over to Finance Corporate Services, so I'll turn the chair back to the Deputy Mayor, and away we go.
Thank you very much. Okay, our consent agenda. We have no items under our consent agenda. Matters for consideration is the 2018 budget, draft number 2. Recommended action that the 2018 budget, draft number 2, and related budget documents be received for information and discussion, and that staff amend the 2018 budget as directed. Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Saunders, seconded by His Worship. Mayor Marshall, discussion. Who's going to go first? Councillor LaRose.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Carrie, on page 7, item 11, it says the total taxation reductions of $54,000 has been offset with corresponding debt reduction for Main Street. I'm just trying to understand how that works.
Through you, Madam Chair, page 7 of the public presentation. Okay. Through you, Madam Chair. Item 11, total tax reductions of $54,166. So that represents the 2018 capital changes as directed by Committee of the Whole at the last meeting, which resulted in a net taxation reduction of that $54,000. So that's represented by deferring the fire tanker replacement, removing the downtown community improvement plan, as well as including the amphitheater shelter. So the result of those three changes resulted in a net taxation reduction of $54,166. So to leave our taxation capital base budget at the annual levy of $1.15 million, those reductions were applied to the Main Street reconstruction debt balance to lower it, because we didn't need to borrow that much to balance our 2018 capital program.
So, Madam Chair, that
Yes.
basically means we're just going to lower our debt that we need to borrow for Main Street by $54,000.
I think
Correct.
Okay.
That's what the treasurer just said. Very good. Are there further discussion, comments on the budget as it's presented? Yes, Councillor Saunders.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm wondering if Brian can give us, or give me certainly, an update on the Navy Lane project, $918,842. It seems to me that we're committing a tremendous amount of money on behalf of Main Street. And Brian, what I'm really asking is, how critical is it that we include Navy Lane in this budget this year? Or is that something that can realistically be put off for a couple of years while we focus on making sure that Main Street is done?
Thank you, through your worship, or Madam Chair, to Councillor Saunders. I have had these discussions internally about realistically being able to fund both projects. They are substantial, require substantial wastewater reserves to complete. And it's our position that that Navy Lane is a priority project, but we could defer it a year or two in the plan and get by until that we have the reserve funds available to do the project.
Thank you very much, Brian. I'm interested in where we go with respect to that response now. We've heard our Director of Public Works say that this could be put off for a year to 2 years. I guess it's my own belief that if there was a time when we might well be advised to put it off for a year to 2 years, that time is now. And how do we get consensus around this table? I'm interested in hearing other people around the table, how they feel on this issue.
Thank you for your comments. We did have extensive discussion about that very item last week, so perhaps I think His Worship wanted to speak, and Councillor Levy.
Thank you. I guess it boils down to, I think financially, I understand moving it out, what that does for us. And Brian, I appreciate the fact that you can move it out a year or two, but what concerned most of council the last couple of weeks back was the fact that what's the risk, right? So at the end of the day, like, what are we risking here? And so two questions. One is, Brian, in your estimation, what is the risk if we move it out? The real risk, right? And I need that kind of professional opinion on that. And Carrie, to Councillor Saunders' point, and I think Brian mentioned it, it's my understanding that 588,000 DCs, we've got those DCs, so we're not borrowing money, so those DCs exist, so financially we could actually do this without impacting the budget, and we do have those development charges. So two questions: what is the risk, and are the 588,000 in development charges existing in our bank accounts today?
Thank you, Your Worship. To answer the first question, in terms of the priority of the risk related to deferring the project, the risk associated with the project is the fact that the pump station, as it operates right now, is over capacity. So there's really no emergency storage to speak of in that station. There's about a foot of operating storage in that wet well. And over time, it's my belief that the original pump station was actually built to service the few properties on the north end of Fox Street only. Over the course of time, through the late 80s and 90s, we had Jury Drive get connected to that pump station, which has existing properties on it now. And we also have when the town operated it as a park, they also had those flows coming in from the washrooms. Since that time, we've also had the Discovery Harbor development, in the Captain Roberts table, the theater, also connected to that pump station as well. So the risk associated with is that there's very little storage. When there is a pump failure, we do need to respond very quickly. We need to, and especially if there's a power failure, we do have a transfer switch there, so we do have backup power, but we have to bring it there. So the risk is we haven't had a bypass that we're aware of, and the bay is right there. But the risk is that if we don't respond accordingly, it is monitored by our SCADA system, but it does need a very quick response from our staff.
Thank you. Further?
Joe, I think in terms of Kerry, I think you nodded your head that the development charges are there. So I guess, Councillor Saunders, my opinion, I think we should leave it in. I think the risk is a little too high, and so my opinion would be to leave it in, if in fact we have the DCs. Thanks.
If I can respond to that through you, Madam Chair. It really isn't the DCs that are financing issue for this decision. It is the wastewater rates. So the wastewater rates, in terms of the increase related to the Main Street reconstruction project, they're not there for this project. So it's a complicated issue that looks at Main Street, that looks at any of the other larger wastewater projects such as this one, the Navy Lane one. It's also an issue that relates to the 2018 utility rates that I'm going to be bringing forward for recommendation. So it's a snowball effect from the final Main Street cost that did come in, and yeah, it's not the DCs that are the issue, it's the rates.
Okay, thank you for that. So, and if I recall correctly, just for clarification, so the rates right now, I think we've predicted would be about 2%. Remember, it was at 4, and then it went down to 3, then 2, and flatlined at 2 for a while. So you're saying that 2 is actually not going to be realistic. It'll be beyond 2.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Levy?
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Saunders for bringing this up. There is a risk. There's never been a bypass, though. The reality is our staff is very well aware that they have to respond. It is monitored. They have the mitigation methods in place. Not only is the money an issue, particularly the pressure on our wastewater rates. We seem to be very concerned always with tax increase, but play fast and loose with water rates and wastewater rates. And there's big a concern to people struggling to keep their homes as taxes are. Having said that, I think that we could certainly delay it a year. Another issue I have with this project is we have one huge important project next year, that being the Main Street, and I'd like to see, from a staffing and resource point of view, I'd like to see all hands on deck for that project without any other major projects that our senior staff have to involve themselves with. So having said all that, I would certainly support at the end of this discussion moving that project be delayed until 2019.
Thank you. Is there further comments from other councillors? Are you putting a motion on the floor, Councillor? You are. Do you have a seconder for that? Councillor Saunders? Madam Clerk, have you captured that?
If I could have Councillor Levy just give me a quick rejig of what she was.
I think she's
just get clerky. It's to
keep the project in.
The Navy Lane project be delayed
yes.
to the 2019 capital project, with all your fancy words thrown in.
Carrie?
If I may say so, that council has directed staff to present 2018 and 2019 capital budget for approval and adoption. The Municipal Act does say that council can do that. However, the 2019 capital budget does need to be readopted in that year. Having said that, in terms of the financial analysis that I have done and that the Director of Public Works has looked at, certainly a reprieve of 2019 for large financial capital projects would be recommended in terms of another $1 million project in 2019 without the associated financial results coming in from 2018 to pay for that project. So if I may, 2020 might be best.
Thank you for your comments. We'll get the motion on the floor, and then there's a couple of people.
That the Navy Lien capital project be deferred to the 2019 capital budget process?
Yes, and following what Carrie said, at that point, we could certainly, if it would be prudent to go to 2020, we can look at it then. But for now, I think 2019 would be the appropriate move for us to make with the information we have right now.
Thank you. That was a yes. That was a yes. And the seconder approves. Councillor Leroux?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I supported the increase to this in the first budget go, and basically my reasoning for supporting it was the fact that to me it was a health and safety issue, and it was also a liability. And I hate to think what kind of costs we would incur if something did happen if this didn't proceed. So I'm not going to be supporting the motion to remove.
Thank you. Councillor Mayotte?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to Brian, to make sure I understand, the Navy Lane, the piping is too small? It should be upsized? Or is it the station that's got to be bigger? Like, what is it? I'm just trying to understand and make sure.
Thank you. Through Madam Chair to Councillor Mayotte, it's actually the station itself. So it's not the piping that feeds into the station, it's actually the wet well itself that needs to be upgraded and increased in size.
So would you say this is something like just a time bomb ready to go off, or have we been lucky, touch wood?
Well, as Councillor Levy has alluded to, we do have a very good staff. It is monitored. It is monitored through our SCADA system, so it does generate a lot of callouts, especially when there are theater events there. They have a large slug of flows coming through at intermissions, and it's almost like clockwork that they're going to get a call out. So we haven't had a bypass, thankfully, that we've ever recorded, and we hope we never have. But the station does need to be upgraded, and I do think that we could withstand a reprieve of a few years on the project, given the situation with the financing.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I got several issues with this item. We started this in 2013, I recall, and I think Brian can remind us about this. 2013, we had a consultant come in, so we had to do it. We mapped through what the process looked like. We were going to do the work, I believe, in the end of 15, early 16. It was about $450,000. We needed to do it now, and Brian said, this is a risk, it needs to happen now. We put it off, we put it off, we keep putting it off. We put it off this year, and our costs doubled this year from $450 to $9 and change. Every time we're putting off, it's costing us more and more again. About 3 committee of the holes meetings ago, Brian presented to us the increased cost, and Brian was adamant there was no funds to do this based on the projects that we're doing. Last budget cycle, we said we want this to happen because of risk. All of a sudden, staff did their work, and they said, we found the money, we can do it. This is a huge risk to us. We all know it's a huge risk to us. And I wasn't going to do this tonight, but I'm going to talk about pickleball because we're going to talk about priorities and projects. So we're going to bring these words back in a few minutes. But Staff have done the work. They said they found the money. They can make it work. And now we're saying we don't think it needs to happen, but we all know the risks. So, Brian, if you can clarify for me and everyone here, kind of that timeline on funding, what did it look like? How much did it cost? What did it increase to be? What's the consultant telling us it's going to increase to be? I understand people are good in the town, they do their work, but what if we didn't do the call-out? What if the sensor did fail and it were to overflow into Georgian Bay? What kind of risk would that be? I'd like to know all that.
Councillor Rawson, Brian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to Councillor Rawson. I'd just like to clarify a few things. Is that we don't have the funding available, so I just want to clarify that the wastewater funds aren't there. So we do have a revised cost estimate. We do know where the money should come from. It's a mixture of DC funds and wastewater rates. But with Main Street happening next year, that is fully depleting our wastewater reserves to the point where we need to borrow. And then add on top of it another, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we have another 400,000 and change that needs to come out of wastewater reserves for the Navy Lane project, not to mention anything else that's coming in the capital plan. So I do realize that that's an issue for us, and that's it is a project that is a priority. It's been brought forward as a priority issue. The design and the EA was done in 2015 for the project, and we brought it forward. And the cost estimate started at I think the construction cost estimate started at about 400,000, which is what the budget was set at. And then through the course of the design, and then of course going through the first round of tendering, we've come to the point where the actual project costs are over double what we thought they were. So it doesn't discount the project as a priority project, but considering the financial implications, I think we could stand to defer it 1 or 2 years given the state of our financing.
So I appreciate all these comments. My further comment is going to be, my understanding is we pushed Chatham Street off now an extra year. So we were going to do an 18, we pushed it to 19, now we're pushing it to 20. So we're going to find considering Chatham Street, we still feel confident we're going to be able to do this in 19 with our water and wastewater rates?
You're saying to defer the project to 2019, if it is? That's I would still think that if we were looking at doing it to 2019, I think we're still looking at borrowing funds to do the project.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion? Yes, Your Worship.
Thank you. Just looking at the utility rates, so that seems to be the driver in terms of cost, and I agree with Councillor Levy that we have to pay attention to utility rates, and we are tracking at 2%, which is pretty low. But when I look at the utility rates, for 27, if we move this off, the utility rates nonetheless are going to be $1.9 million to the Main Street. And so if we move this a year and add in 300,000 next year, at the end of the day, the difference in our utility rates is going to be inconsequential. You're not even going to be able to measure the difference. So I'm not seeing, if we move it out a year, it's no longer a utility rate discussion. Because at the end of the day, putting 300,000 in on the utility rates in 2018 versus 2019, it's the mem shows. It's not going to matter unless I'm missing some calculations, Carrie.
Based on the increased tender for Main Street reconstruction, we're spending or budgeting to spend wastewater rates that we haven't even earned yet. So I don't believe the wastewater rates will be there in 2019 either.
Councillor Debbie Levy moved that the Navy Lane capital project be deferred to the 2019 capital budget process, and this was seconded by Councillor Saunders.
We're talking capital, so I guess we might as well keep going with capital. Yes, Councillor Levy.
I have a question about pickleball. No, in all seriousness, we've looked at this in so many different ways. I'd like to back up and ask, because I've lost the rationale. We were looking at one point for McGuire Park, redoing one tennis court and turning the other tennis court into 4 pickleball courts. Now, I'm looking at the numbers in total for pickleball, $135,000, taxation of $13,500, the rest coming from these magical development charges. Then I'm looking at the McGuire Park tennis court reconstruction, total of $110,000, with taxation of $50,000. So we've got a total of $235,000, $65,000 of which comes from taxation. If we were to do, if I'm correct, 2 tennis courts, 4 pickleball. I'd like to go back briefly and see what the number would be for 1 tennis court, 4 pickleball in that one space, and find out how that compares with what we're looking at right now.
Thank
All
you.
right, I guess that's a question through to Carrie, if she...
Carrie or Sherry. Yes, Carrie. I guess the question is the actual building of pickleball courts versus...
We at one point had a plan that was narrowly defeated to have 1 tennis court at McGuire Park resurfaced and the other tennis court turned into 4 pickleball courts. That's what Councillor Lauder first presented us with, and I'm wondering if at this point in the game, how the current numbers I'm looking at stack up against what those numbers would be.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I don't recall those numbers off the top of my head. However, there was a report done by the Director of Recreation and Community Services. I'm not sure if you recall them off the top of your head. However, I think she can elaborate.
Sherry. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Levy. If I recall correctly, the costing was approximately $8,000 or so more to reconstruct the current courts for 1 tennis and then the pickleball. And the costing differential is the fencing. So the reason that the tennis court reconstruction project and the pickleball courts are different is because the creation of a whole new court would require all the fencing to go, or the perimeter fencing to go around, whereas the reconstruction of the current courts, we are recycling the fencing that's already there, but would be adding some between court fencing.
Supplementary, if I may?
Well, I think we're in territory where we need to talk about reconsideration.
Oh,
We've made some decisions.
in the budget process, we have to do reconsideration?
Well, that's what I'm told.
Okay. No, okay, I was looking for clarity, but I'm not heavily invested in pickleball, so I just wanted to see if we had missed the best scenario and moved on to the worst
Well,
scenario.
I think if we get reconsideration, we can continue this conversation. Madam Clerk, if you could...
Absolutely. I have had this conversation with a couple members of council, specifically about pickleball, specifically about how the budget aligns. And I think that the conversation would, if the budget were to be changed, again, certainly because this is the draft budget, the budget wouldn't necessarily change that decision, but there would be a requirement for a notice for a motion to reconsider, and that would happen on a council agenda. So that doesn't have to happen tonight in order for this discussion to happen. But if that's the decision that council makes through this budget process, it would require a motion to reconsider to make it happen.
Thank you for that clarification, so we can continue our conversation. A second question?
Well, just, I wasn't clear on what Sherry was telling us when you said 80,000 more. 8,000 more for what? Like, when I'm looking at numbers here, I'm looking at $235,000 total. And what I'm saying is 1 tennis court, 4 pickleball, what was the total?
I don't have that exact number offhand,
I
but
bet
at
he
the
does.
time when I completed the analysis, I can see that Councillor Lauder wants to speak to this. I have about $8,000 difference in my head. Instead of going to reconstruct to 2 courts, but do a dual purpose to have tennis and pickleball, the difference in the costing essentially is the additional fencing and netting that would be required, but
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Sherry. We had 2 quotes provided, one at $67,000 for the reconstruction of the tennis courts. That was on a low scale. The $8,000 was the difference in the pickleball. However, what you've found out is that we need to fully replace the courts, and as such, the true cost is going to be $110,000 for the replacement of the 2 tennis courts with 2 tennis courts. At that time, it was a $13,000 was going to be the cost of the upgrade of 1 tennis court to 4 pickleball courts, making the total cost $123,000. Just to point out, if we look at the H870, the reconstruction, $50,000 taxation this year. The H870CF was $60,000 in taxation in 2017 being brought forward. So in total, there's $110,000 taxation being required for the 110,002 tennis court reconstructions. And in fact, if we were to do 1 tennis court and 4 pickleball courts, because the tennis courts, the tennis courts are fully taxation, and yet the pickleball courts are allowed for 90% developmental charges, then in fact, very rough numbers to within $10, though the 1 pickleball and 1 tennis reconstruction would cost $61,800 taxation, of which $60,000 taxation has already been paid, and it would require $61,200 in DC charges. So in fact, in 2018, what you're alluding to, Councilor Levy, is to remove the line 922 pickleball court construction at $135,000, remove that in total, and our $110,000 for the tennis reconstruction to 1 tennis and 2 pickleball would be $123,000. This is all discussion right now. I cannot. No, the ask was for budgeting.
A motion to reconsider would need to be addressed in a council meeting. This is a committee of the whole meeting.
Yes.
But what I'm saying is that motion to reconsider, this is a topic for budget, and if the budget is determined that consideration wants to be made, then it would require a motion to reconsider.
Okay.
So as a topic of discussion for budget, I can continue?
No.
I would say it would be best to limit out around the finances specifically.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what I was doing.
And that's not the merits of location
I have
or.
not said anything like that.
That's all I would limit.
Thank you. So 1 tennis, 1 pickleball costs $61,800 taxation. $60,000's already been paid in 2017, and $61,200 DC charges, which would be fully due in 2018.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor, and through you to Councillor Lauder.
So I guess we've had discussion about pickleball. That seems to be, more discussion. Yes, sorry, Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What you're not saying also is that is eliminating one of the tennis courts in that scenario. The other problem as you know, I have with this is that we need to go right back to the very beginning. Someone is starting with 20-some-odd people that are looking for possibly having a facility. We agreed as council that they would start up on a part-time basis. We would monitor that for a year. We have monitored it for 6 weeks. And after 6 weeks, all of a sudden, we're good to go and spend $135,000 in changing a major recreational facility in our town. What's wrong with keeping with what we said? Take it out for a year, give it a try. How many other of these things have we all seen go by over the years where it's the greatest, biggest, you wait, and then all of a sudden it's not? It's a whole lot of money, a whole lot of DCs, of which, at this point, none of us know anything about. We don't have a DC report to say, is that taking 100% of the DCs? 12%? 10%? What's left in the DC account? We know nothing of that information. So I don't know why we're trying to backtrack. We should just stick with what we said from the very beginning, that we would monitor it for a year, see what kind of interest there is, and then we will deal with it in a year from now at the budget then.
Thank you, Councillor Rose. But the fact is, there is $130,000 that's in our budget for 2018, our capital budget for
No,
2018.
there's $130,000 worth of DCs. But sitting here as a counselor, I don't know. Is that all of the DCs that were from that? Is that half the DCs? Is that taking the DCs away from another project that we had deferred from 2 years ago and didn't have the DCs, but now we're taking them from here? Without a DC report, we have zero idea. We're just like we were with the Navy Lane. We didn't know that there was no money. Now there is money. Now there isn't money. Now we got to borrow to get that money. I don't know what is the rush. 22 people signed up for something to try it out for the very first time, and we want to go spend 140 grand on it?
Thank you, Councillor Rose. Councillor Rawson?
I think Councillor Rose said it best. I echo everything you said. I think this is a very disrespectful issue we're talking about. I spoke to 37 people on Saturday for dinner who asked about an outdoor rink. And I said, staff brought forward a report to us, and we said it was too much for us to look at, and we put that off. But again, we got a 6-week project, and we want to invest money in this. Councillor Levy said a while ago, all hands on deck. Let's do Main Street. We should only be worried about the important infrastructure. Oops, let's do pickleball. I'm sure if Brian, we just asked Brian, we need Navy Lane to happen. He says, I have no money. Oh, but we're going to do pickleball. I'm sure if we asked Paul, would you like to get your truck sooner, or do you want to put it off? Thank you for doing that, by the way. But now we're taking essential services, our fire truck that he said he needs to do. We said, Paul, can you wait 3 years? He said, I'll make it work for you. Brian, the core infrastructure that we need to do, but we're pushing them. We're going to delay this 2 years, but we're going to make pickleball happen. This is so disrespectful and ignorant. I don't know why we're doing it.
Point of order, I don't appreciate being called ignorant. I was trying to actually save us money, Councillor Rawson. I thought that if we could combine it and go back to what we originally discussed, we could actually save money. I'll leave it at that.
So where do
What are we removing?
Your Worship?
Yeah, thank you. I'm on the other side of this. So we have $500,000 in recreation DCs that we collected. That was $1 million. That these are developers who developed in our community, and we took $1 million of that development money, and we said to those house builders and those home builders and good folks like the Jarlets who built their fine facility, that we're taking this money and we're spending it on recreation. So to me, if I'm that developer and you told me you're going to spend money in recreation, then you better not have it in the piggy bank. You better make some recreation stuff happen. So we have about $500,000 in there. It's $122,000 of that money, so it's development money. It's not taxation. So we're talking about a $13,000 line out item in terms of overall town taxation. So I am fine with pickleball going in here. I'm not convinced that a new court is the right path. I'm kind of leaning towards Councillor Levy, thinking about tennis courts versus the other. I'd still like to think that my way through that conversation. I don't think we have to make that determination tonight, but I certainly am supporting pickleball. And you think about our residents, right? So I get money, understand that, but at the end of the day, we're here to live, work, and play. But more importantly, for residents, we want them to enjoy living here, enjoy playing here, enjoy working here, and that's part of our obligations as well. 31% of our residents are seniors. 10 years from now, that number changes to 41%. Pickleball's coming at us. I think it's there. I heard enough seniors tell me that it should be there. No disrespect to Councillor Rawson. I'm a big fan of the outdoor rink, and I'd like to make that happen too, because we got development charges in that budget as well. But in terms of the pickleball, I'd like to see it in the budget and think our way through the pluses and minuses for new versus existing court, as Councillor Levy has thrown the bait in the water. So I'm going to vote against Councillor Rawson's motion, but wide open for discussion of what it should look like. Thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Leroux, and I think we'll call for the vote after Councillor Leroux speaks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The last budget, the way it worked was that there were two separate items. The tennis courts were in the budget at $50,000 and $60,000. $60,000 already being there, carried over from 2017. $50,000 was coming from DCs, and the new amount that was added into the budget of $122,000 was to create at McGuire Park 4 new pickleball courts. So to remove anything, they're two separate items. So for myself, I'm ready to move forward on both the tennis courts and the pickleball.
Thank you. I think we have a motion in front of us. I think that we've had ample discussion. It appears that at our regular council meeting, we'll have to deal with a motion of reconsideration and have this discussion, a further discussion. Correct, Madam Clerk?
Certainly, if that's the will of council is to reconsider that project, then that would be the way to do it.
To come later, but we have a motion on the floor now. And could you read the motion, please?
I have that Councillor Rawson moved that the pickleball court construction allocation be removed from the budget. And it was seconded by Councillor LaRose.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? So the motion is defeated. Thank you. I think we need to move on with other discussions rather than pickleball. Are there further discussions in our capital budget that need to have discussion? Not too much, I don't think. Okay. Councillor Louder?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to bring forth for discussion so that everyone's fully aware of our situation. Yesterday, it's going to base on the Severn Sound Environmental Association and the invasive species. Yesterday, they had their first invasive species work group, and council and staff representatives from all of North Simcoe, plus Severn and Springwater, were present. Now, I was extremely pleased. I got there a little early, but I was extremely pleased to see Rene Loren there also, and I immediately began discussions with him. He personally came up with quite a number of invasive species that he's experienced here. The big one being Phragmites, just to the left of or west of our Legacy Walkway, and subsequent to that, the meeting, a comprehensive list of invasive species that have been reported. 88 instances have been reported to the SSCA, and they're mapping those instances currently for all of North Simcoe. Basically, last April, Jeff
Councillor
Hamlin...
Louder, I think you need to perhaps get to the point. I don't...
Okay, so basically what I'd like to do...
You're going to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we reconsider the SSCA's invasive species pilot project. We're in the second year of that, so the cost would be at $7,000 for this 2018 budget year. Capital project for T&E.
And I'll second that. So I guess the discussion?
I just looked through clearly. Is that one of the items that we just did at the last page and it said ins and outs? I just want to make sure where that is. So it's not in the budget. It was one of those ones that we had that last page that said, do you want to consider X, Y, and Z? That's what we're talking about? Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I was thinking down the right path. Thanks.
Yes, Councillor Saunders.
Madam Chair, just the question before me is not just what Councillor Lauder is raising, but my understanding of when you move a motion or reconsideration, the motion has to be raised by someone who voted on the affirmative side on the previous motion. And I don't know how Councillor Lauder voted on that issue.
Councillor Lauder, I do believe you supported.
However, it was not a ratification by council, so it was just discussions, budget discussions, and as such, there has been no motion accepted or denied, defeated. Is that correct?
Madam Clerk?
Madam Clerk?
We're in territory that perhaps we shouldn't be.
No, it's fine. I think just to be clear, I think the intent of council, we talked about this briefly at our last meeting, is we've had a budget draft meeting. We've had councillors move, second, carry, defeat, things that they want to see in the budget, things that they don't want to see in the budget. We're having an opportunity now to have a second look at that. Our treasurer has pieced together all of those changes from that first meeting. She has now presented to you what that looks like. This gives you a new opportunity to look at those numbers and make sure that those decisions are A, what you really wanted to see based on the results that she's provided to you, or B, are there new opportunities to make those changes? So I think, the pickleball conversation was a perfect example of that. Perhaps there could have been counselors around the table that said, you know what, now in the light of what the treasurer has provided, I am changing my mind, and that's where we're making this decision. So we're trying to be as flexible in terms of procedure to get to the true intent of council, which is to come to an agreement as a whole at the end so that the treasurer can present a final budget.
So, Councillor Lauder, you do have a motion on the floor, of which I second. Is there further discussion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I respectfully think the motion is out of order because Councillor Lauder voted against that resolution at when it was last considered, and therefore he is not qualified under our own bylaws to move a motion of consideration.
My recollection of that discussion is did we have an official, it was just a straw vote, if I may use that term.
Through you, Madam Chair, if I recall, the budget requests that were outside of our budget draft were presented in a list. There was only one that was moved and approved to be included in the budget process, and there was no other mover or seconder or inclusion of any of the other items, if I recall correctly.
Thank you, Your Worship.
If I could, because I was chairing that particular section, so the chair's 100% right. There was only one recommendation made that night. What I was doing as chair was trying to get the, by show of hands, who was in favor of keeping something in or out. So there were more straw votes, Councillor Saunders. There wasn't an official vote ever taken. The only official vote was the last recommendation. So I would suggest, support the clerk's opinion that it's fair game for Councillor Lauder's motion to be brought forward.
Yes, Councillor Saunders.
Madam Chair, if, as it has been described, the votes were straw votes, then those were not official votes, and therefore there's no need to reconsider anything. If Councillor Lauder wants to bring it forward again, that's entirely his right.
Well,
That's not a reconsideration.
That's a great clarification, Councillor Saunders. I think what maybe took us down the wrong path was the word reconsider, which I know we're all so sensitive to. So I think we're all on the right path, and I think we can proceed.
thank you. So the motion reads, before I call for the vote,
Councillor Lauder moved that to include funding allocation in the amount of $7,000 for the SSEA invasive species support.
thank you.
Is that correct?
So you moved, I second. Oh.
Clarification?
Oh, and now we'll ask for discussion, clarification.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And there's tons of notes. I don't want to get into them. I think it's a very worthwhile project. My only thing that that is interesting is that on leaving, there was two things, but the first thing is that on leaving the meeting yesterday, we're still in the meeting, and Renee asked the question, what happens when we find invasive species or something we don't know about on our shoreline? And the response was, yes, we'll come down, identify it, and then we'll leave, because it is a new project under special funding for them. And as such, the tons of other things that they've got here, for example, the strategy that they're trying to promote. I know Mayor Marshall talked about a strategy from the Simcoe time period, Simcoe County, but that's not governing to Severn Sound. So I really think we need to look at something that's going to be personalized to our needs here by the Severn Sound Environmental Association. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Louder. Councillor LaRue? You're fine now. Further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of the motion that has been brought forward? Against? The motion is defeated once again. Thank you, Councillor Louder. Are there other items that need to be brought forward this evening? Councillor LaRue?
Still on the capital budget, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yeah. Madam Chair, in the capital budget, with further discussion with our Director of Recreation, I'm going to propose that the $40,000 that was moved from 2020 to the 2018 budget for a roof over the amphitheater be removed. Reason being that 40,000 is not an exact figure, a number. It could be much more, we don't know. And at the same time, our recreation director has indicated to me that there's a lot of things on our plate for 2018 that have to be completed, and it would give her time to actually do a proper analysis and funding request on the roof. So though I'd like to see it happen, I'm going to move that the 40,000 be moved back to either 2020 or 2019.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder for that? Councillor Mayat, discussion? I think you have to clarify if it's 19 or 20.
Well, I would ask my Director of Recreation what year she would like.
Which year we'd like the amphitheater project?
Yes.
The original year that we had it budgeted in, which I believe was 2020?
2020. That's where you want to go back to 2020? 2020.
Okay. So it'll go back to the original. Okay. So we have a motion, we have a mover and a seconder. Do we need to read the motion again? I don't think so. All those in favor? Opposed? My, we have, that was a good one. Thank you.
Brian, a question for you. In the Public Works Capital Plan H108 rate report for water and wastewater, I know we did one, I believe, in 2014. It might have been 15. I think we did an update early 16, I recall. I'm just wondering, when is the normal time frame for this to be done? So is this a normal scheduled process? I thought when we did the last one, we were anticipating 5 years or so. So is it on schedule, or is this to see if we need to recoup more funds for Main Street and other things?
Thank you, through Madam Chair, to Councillor Rawson. The typical time period for these rate reports is about 5 years, and the reason why we're having it in the 2018 budget is to reflect some capital works that we're undertaking in the near future. Most notably the Main Street project that has had a significant impact on our wastewater and water rates supported projects. We've also had some changes to our capital plan, most notably Navy Lane and other reconstruction projects like Chatham Street as well that are in the capital plan that need to be reflected. And also looking at the last financial plan dating back to the last rate report, our projections for our revenues, specifically for water and wastewater, are not trending along the original path. So we're actually collecting less than what we were projecting. So those need to be updated as well.
Can you just confirm for me the last study and then the update to the study? Am I right in 14 and 15 or 15 and 16?
I believe so. That was, I think there was an original rate report done in 2013, I believe, or 14, and an update to that study to reflect, among other things, the Pyatt Reservoir project, the capital budget being significantly less than was originally budgeted.
Madam Treasurer, did you have a comment?
Brian and I had this conversation, and I pulled the original report as well as the update for him. I'm just trying to think of the years. But through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Rawson, I believe it was 2013 with a 2015 update. So this 2018 rate study is actually on track with our 5-year study, even though we did a mid-year update in 2015.
Thank you. Discussion in reference to our capital budget for 2018-2019. Councillor Louder.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll give you the capital budget. I'm looking at 2019 for Public Works capital budget, and I'm looking at, this is on page 91 of our presentation. M898, the pedestrian crossing at Robert Street West, taxation of $50,000. Basically, as I remember, it's one letter that's been presented to council, and our reaction to that. Basically, I would like to see an internal, I believe it could be fully internal, departmental road and trail count, because I know from a trail standpoint, we can get from Simcoe County a trail counter, and I'm hoping that we have road counters, traffic counters that we can either acquire for a short period of time, but I'd like to see in 2018 that we do some sort of internal study, not a costly one, just get some numbers, get some understanding prior to council committing to a $50,000 taxation on an email being received from one resident. It is a good cause. However, I'd like to see some justification before making such a decision. That's my first, and if I can come back with an operational when you're ready.
Thank you, Councillor Louder. Councillor Levy, did you? Oh, I thought you were getting ready, yes.
I'd be just as happy to, I'm not that terribly concerned with 2019 at this point, but I would just be just as happy to have that item pulled out completely. Having lived in the West End for 20-some-odd years, I don't think I need a study to know that people can always cross the street safely down there. So and to respond by putting a $50,000 item in a budget based on one email is a little over the top, I think.
Yes, Councillor Mayotte.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brian, if you remember at the last budget meeting, Councillor Saunders was asking, was it possible to be removing the crosswalk from CCL, which is not being used anymore, down here? Would there be any cost saving? Did you look into that, or can you give us a report for that? Or
yes, I did look into that. So you're, I believe the request is to put a fully signalized intersection at Thompson's Road and Robert Street East, if I'm not mistaken, and to utilize the existing pedestrian crosswalk at CCL in some way to assist in creating that signalized intersection, if I'm not mistaken. I just going to ask for some verification on that.
I'm not sure I remember a fully singled intersection. Councillor Saunders?
Yeah, I asked Brian to get us a cost for that, because I run that route many times per day, and as you well know, that's our truck bypass around downtown. And if you're driving a big tandem, I've been behind those big tandems, and they have a heck of a time frequently getting across the Robert Street intersection. And so if we're going to have lights at one end of Thompson's Road, then it only makes sense to me we should have lights at the other end of Thompson's Road as well. And what we're trying to do is facilitate the truck traffic in particular. Now, since there's already a pedestrian walk there, it struck me that likely there is also the signal box, the electronics that are likely there And so my feeling was it would be a relatively inexpensive fix in order to totally signal that intersection. That's what I asked Brian to see if he could find a cost for it.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. Brian, can you add to that?
Yes, although the existing crosswalk is there, we could utilize signal heads that in that respect, but the traffic signal controller itself would need to be replaced because it's a different, actually is controlling four legs instead of just the one. So there wouldn't be any cost savings in utilizing the existing signal controller. And you'd also have to do the ductwork that feeds the signal lights on all three legs of that intersection. So you'd still be in and around, I would say, $100,000.
Thank you. Councillor May. Oh,
Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Saunders.
Not in.
That's right.
That's correct.
You got me totally confused here, Brian.
Yep.
I was just thinking of taking that crosswalk light, bring it down here. Why are we putting lights up there?
Oh, it was a request that came to me.
No, I'm just,
through Councillor Saunders after the last budget meeting.
I'm just leave it as it was, take the cross light, bring it down here.
Yeah.
Over here, don't have to put lights up there, I mean,
No,
that's
no.
what I was looking at.
Sorry, I guess the two items are getting confused. The crosswalk at Robert Street West in the location of vicinity of Dupuis Lane, adjacent to the dog park. We did some traffic counting, as Councillor Lauder had referred to. It does warrant a pedestrian signed crosswalk under the OTM manual. And so we've put in a budgetary figure as per our staff report that we submitted, I think, earlier in the summer when the letter came in, that we would bring it forward for budget consideration.
So the budget consideration is the $50,000 that is in 2019.
That's right.
Thank you. Does that clarify everything?
Madam Chair, I didn't realize that we had accepted, as council had accepted a budget request. So thank you, it did.
Thank you.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I do have an operationals for RCS, recreational, and basically,
Well, we're just, okay, if, just wait a sec, we're still into budget. Yes, Councillor LaRose.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wonder, in light of a decision that Council seems to have made in a few minutes ago, the request of 20-some-odd people to spend $100 and some odd thousand for pickleball. I wonder if everybody can recollect that when we talked about having an outdoor rink or an outdoor skating surface, we had groups of people here come and present to us. We had the Ball Hockey Association ask for it, and I don't see anything in the capital plan at all for that or in the immediate future. So I just wonder why we're trying to treat two groups of people, some that have already been asking for years, have come in greater numbers, and yet we're all of a sudden having to spend all this money for a smaller group of people. So I just wonder if there was any plans to have any money, any more thought, any more capital, anything like that in for an outdoor skating surface.
Are you putting a motion on the floor, Councillor LaRose?
No, I'm just asking, where is it in the budget? Is it coming up in year 6, year 8, year 10, year 12? We're taking a whole whack of money for a few people. We've got these large groups of people that have asked us for many, many years, and I know most of us are going to get a lot of questions about that when we get back on the street saying, we've been looking for this for 10 years, but you can spend all this money down there for something else. But I just want to know, have a reasonable answer that I can tell them, no, they have to wait another 20 years, they have to wait 18 years, what do they got to wait?
Good. Thank you, Councillor LaRose. I will ask the CAO to comment to that.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll take a stab at it, and then I'll just ask our Director of Rec to fill in any gaps. There was a report brought forward by our Director of Recreation, I want to say in May or June, with a number of options presented with respect to the outdoor rink. I believe the option that committee and eventually council endorsed was to poll the public and use that opportunity to get a little more info, more specifics around funding, location, etc., and then report back. So I don't believe you see anything in this long-term capital plan, and I may be wrong on that, but ultimately there hasn't been that feasibility study done to determine costing, so it would be a complete stab in the dark at this point. But I'll just ask Sherry to fill in any gaps.
Mr. CEO, Sherry?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The discussion at the time, if I recall correctly, was that we weren't able to clearly articulate to council the amount of taxation or investments that would need to be put into maintaining our current facilities, and that we were waiting for the outcome of building condition assessments and to look at what we needed to invest to keep our current infrastructure going. And I believe the discussion that council had agreed on was to defer that discussion until there was a better understanding of what our current facilities required.
Thank you. Councillor LaRose?
Madam Chair, we did, and Sherry had done a quick look-up to find out that an outdoor surface with a roof on it was somewhere between $2 and $4 million to have one like to have in Perkinsfield, that type of a thing. I'm saying more just for an outdoor skating surface. So if we can afford $140,000 to build 4 courts for 25 people, can we not inject some money for groups of people that have been asking and waiting for this for a long time?
Thank you for your comments. Mayor Marshall.
Thank you. I'm right with Councillor LaRose. So I was up in North Bay, and I went out and checked the rinks, and we don't have to spend $1 million. We don't have to spend probably north of $100,000. To be truthful, the ones I saw were quite well done and certainly well used across North Bay. So my suggestion maybe, and I'll look for a second, or maybe Councillor Rose, if you've got an appetite for it, is we throw $25,000 into next year's budget as a placeholder taxation-wise. And if you think about it, we need 10% down, which means the staff would have up to $250,000 in DCs to apply to that 25. So it's just a placeholder. We put 25 in there, we get the serious conversation on the table, but I'd argue that's more than enough to get the job done.
Thank you. Councillor LaRose?
I guess I'm making a motion on there.
Yes. That's what
Madam Chair, I am making a motion of some nature to put on the table for council consideration.
Just a comment, just being that we've all dealt with this for a number of years, I bet you 15 or 20 years, I would still rather see us, instead of bow to these 22 people to do our whole rec thing, take the money that we had allocated for down there and put that towards an outdoor surface that people have been asking for years and years and years.
Well, I think, first off, we have a motion on our...
So my motion is to include $25,000 in the 2019 budget for an outdoor rink.
Do you have a seconder for that?
No.
You need a seconder. Okay, further discussion? I know Councillor Rose has, but I think there's 2 separate issues here. This is a start, so... Carrie, would you read the motion, please? Or I guess that's Stacy sitting there.
It's a compliment. I'll take it as a compliment. Mayor Jerry Marshall moved that $25,000 be included in the 2019 budget allocation for future outdoor ice rink.
Thank you. Further
Seconded by
discussion?
Councillor Levy.
Yes. Yes, Councillor Saunders.
Madam Chair, I very much appreciate the mayor's intent, but it seems to me that if the comments that I've been hearing are that we are not treating the pickleball group and the ice rink group even-handedly, and that I don't see the mayor's resolution as solving that problem. And if we're going to put $100 and whatever thousand in the budget for pickleball, I don't see why we don't bite the bullet, put $100 and some odd $1,000 in the budget for an ice rink, and that way both populations are looked after. It's an even-handed solution. And my 2 colleagues to my right, I know, are going to play the Grinch again, but I would ask the mayor if he's comfortable with a friendly amendment to his motion to put that same amount into the budget for an outdoor rink as we have presently for pickleball?
Could certainly adjust to that. So the amount for next year would then be 13,000 taxation and 122,000 DCs. 2019 budget.
2019.
In the absence of a DC report, we have no idea whether we have that money available or whether there's 10 times that available.
Actually, we do. It's $500,000 less than 122, so we know it's $380,000 left in that account.
Yeah, but we don't know what's already been committed to parks and for recreation equipment and playground equipment and the development of the new parks with all the new houses being built. For me to look at that, I couldn't do that.
Thank you. I think Councillor LaRue, you had...
Well, it's fact, Madam Chair, that I am definitely in favor of an outdoor rink and something that could possibly be used in the summer months for ball hockey. I, for one, would probably prefer to be on the upside of the number than being on the low side. And the thing is that if we say we're going to bump it to 125 as opposed to 25, we're more comfortable at the 125. If we're able to come in at 50, it's bonus. So I'm going to support the 125.
Thank you. Councillor Mayotte and then our treasurer.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay.
I'm definitely in favor of a second rink, an outside rink, but I'm sort of support Councilor Rose. I'd like to be bloody sure that we've got that money here. The public wants it, we can get it, but can we get that money? Do we have that money there? I just want to make 100% sure. I'd like to see it in black and white, I guess.
Our treasurer will comment to that. Councillor Mayotte.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. There is, I recently did check, Recreation Community Services has about $500,000 in development charges, and in the 2018 capital budget, it looks there's $197,000 allocated from DCs, which includes Martin Valley Trail, McGuire Park Playground, as well as pickleball. And also, just to clarify, the motion that I heard on the floor was to match the pickleball project, and it's $135,500. $13,500 coming from taxation.
Thank you, Carrie. Yes, Councillor LaRose.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was in no way to get council all excited about something that we're not thinking about again. We haven't given the Recreation Department any time to say what, where, how many extra staff it would take, how are we going to do it, can we afford to pay for the water to flood it, all of that. Holy jeez. All I was saying was, I don't believe that we, as council, were remembering the people that were here advocating for this way ahead of this other group, and all I was saying was keep the budget the same, just reallocate it to the people that had asked for it first. Not adding new budgets, not adding new staff, not adding all of this stuff, because all we're thinking about is a quick little budget. Oh yeah, who doesn't want one? Everybody would put up their hand to want one, but we do not know the ramifications of having one. So it was nothing to do with that. It was just to be fair to the people that had asked first.
Thank you, Councillor Rose. Councillor Rawson.
I don't think Councilor Rose thought about all sides of this when he brought it up.
I don't think so.
I'm at the rink a lot. My question and concern, I'm going to ask Sherry if she can help us. When we talked about this a few months ago, my understanding a year ago, we dropped our ICE user rates because our rentals were dropping and people were going to Midland. Our resolve to that was, let's drop the ICE rental rate to hopefully keep people here. That tells me we have more supply than demand. Putting another rink in doesn't fix that equation. To me, it's going to make it worse. Echo on top of that, our operating expenses. We just finished talking about increasing our staffing because of our beautiful parks and the like. So we also need to think about what's the operating expense side of that. I wasn't going to bring this up tonight, but I'm going to have to. I've talked about this several times. Neighboring municipalities are using our existing arena. We need to go knock on their door and ask them to pony up and pay their fair share before we go put more ice surfaces in that we don't even use right now. So in context, I am willing to look at this, but I'm really have a hard time understanding the supply versus demand. I don't know if Sherry has that available, she can help us, but I go by the rink every single day, and the parking lot's empty. Not all the time, but you can call and get ice rates right now. So I'm just, Sherry, are people batting on your doors and saying, hey, we need to get in here, and we have nothing, we turn them away? Like, what's supply demand really look like?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Rawson. So I would like the opportunity to speak with our facilities manager, but to your question about decreasing the rates, that was previous to me, and I understand it was for just a specific time of day. I believe that people are competitive, or they all want the same time, the prime times, but there is availability for ice time in non-prime times at the rink.
Mayor Marshall, you did put a motion forward, so I think.
Sure, yes, I've got the motion. Just in terms of demand, we saw it when you had the outdoor rink a couple of years ago over here with Eddie boards. It was as plain could be, and it was used every night and greatly appreciated. The fact of the matter is this is in the 2019 budget, so staff have plenty of time to work your way through the conversation, plenty of time to address this at next budget time in front of this council and the council that will follow this council. So plenty of time to have the conversation. Right now it's a placeholder of equal value. And let's have the conversation, see where it takes us. So I'm still supporting and moving the motion.
Thank you. And you had a mover for that? Good. Further discussion? I think we've had good discussion, so I will call for the vote. Would you like to read the motion to make sure that we
Just to be extra clear in terms of numbers, because I think I did capture, but Mayor Marshall moved that $122,000 in development charges and $13,500 in taxation be included in the 2019 budget allocation for future outdoor ice rink.
Thank you. Is that clear? All those in favor of that motion? Opposed? So it's carried. It's carried. Okay. So it is a placeholder in the 2019 budget. Okay, guys, we've had ample discussion here on a lot of things. Is there any further discussion in reference to our capital budget? Seeing none, we will move over. Oh, Councillor, yes.
Madam Chair, I'm just wondering if we could take a 10-minute recess before we get into the operation stuff?
Certainly. Is there going to be a lot of discussion in our operating budget? I don't really think so. I think the operating budget had good discussion last week. You have one item. And so.
I support taking a break.
Support taking a break. 5 minutes. We all want to go home.
Yeah, there you go.
Hello? I think we're on now. Okay, council, I think we'll resume our discussion. It is 8:45, and hopefully we'll another 15 minutes or so, and we can put everything to bed until the third draft. Okay, I guess we're open discussion for operating budget, and I understand, Councillor Louder, that you do have one item that you would like to bring forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One item. And it is in recreational and community services in the 2018 budget. It's line item 1-4, Sen 320 on page 85. And it's the Canada Day and All Things Canadian contracted expenses. Really, in fact, I believe you just break the three of the expenses down. The total for the Canada Day is $50,000. That was in the past $25,000, and the special for Canada 150 was to put it up to $50,000. And I'm just wondering if we could, especially with our Main Street being reconstructed and all the work that's going on, can we put our Canada Day our summer special event celebration back down to a $25,000 operating? So I'm making that suggestion.
Jerry, would you like to comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Lauder. Certainly, if it's the will of the council to establish the budget for running our events, then we will plan an event accordingly. However, we did receive lots of positive feedback with the increased magnitude of the event that we did offer this year. Lots of people were appreciative that they could go up to different activities and there was no cost involved. Children could get a glitter tattoo and they would go to pay and they say, oh, it's free. They can get on the bouncy castle, oh, it's free. So we could go back to more of a user fee-based type of event. But the feedback that we had was that people appreciated that it was accessible to everybody.
Thank you for that. So I believe, is there a desire to leave the $50,000 as is? Well, I'm kind of seeing that, I think. No hands are up, so. Okay, it stays. Thank you, Councillor Louder. I believe, Councillor Rawson, you had something you wanted to bring forward.
All right. I don't know the line number, but Carrie might have to bear with me. We've talked in the past about our self-funded sick leave, short-term leave plan. I'm wondering about the opportunities, and I'm thinking as a risk mitigation, about getting insurance policy or plan, call it STD, LT, whatever. Have we looked at that, evaluated that, and looked at the opportunity for that as a, not only a risk mitigation tool, but something we can plan for, we can budget for, and we know what that looks like?
Carrie, if you could
Through you,
comment
Madam
to
Chair.
that.
Through you, Madam Chair. In response to that, I'll probably look to the CAO or the Director of Human Resources, because that discussion has taken place in terms of what our in-house funded pieces are, and maybe moving forward and looking at discussing it with our current benefit broker.
Through Deputy Mayor, yes, we have started an analysis. We're working with our current benefit provider to look at what our past usage has been, and to work with our current provider to see what kind of costing would come up as to offer out an STT and an LDD plan and not be self-insured, and any elements also of the benefit package that we self-insure. That analysis, though, has been not completed yet, but we are looking at it.
So is this something we may see this year, like this year's budget cycle, next year's budget cycle? And I'm assuming whatever is there as the placeholder will cover if we had 2 events and people went off, we were able to cover that and it wouldn't put us in a spot we're pulling from a contingency or the like?
Through you, Madam Chair, Councillor Rawson, I think regardless of when the analysis is done or whether that move is made in 2018, it would be, we would move forward on it if it was cost efficient for the town to do so. And because we always rely on our contingency to cover what we do incur, that I think we already have the funding in place if staff wanted to present to council to make that move mid-year.
So just to follow up, so I appreciate that, but there's no line item attributed to that today. So I hear what you're saying, and we'll go to the contingency to cover the premium, but if we know what that looks like, or we have an idea what that looks like, would we not be appropriate to start putting a placeholder for that now? We may need to increase when the time comes, but to me, that's a real operating cost that we should be looking at and realizing. It's basically an insurance policy. It's a premium we're paying for.
Through you, Madam Chair, I would have to, I haven't been directed as a result of the in-house analysis going on to make those changes, so that's something that if anybody else has a comment on.
Mr. CAO, would you like to comment?
Sure, through you, Madam Chair. This conversation started, I guess, maybe about a month ago, or actually it started much sooner, or well before that, but it's been picked back up roughly a month or two ago. Let's say a month ago. We have received some preliminary information from our insurer. I think at this point, I think staff is comfortable with the budget set as is based on status quo. It's definitely something that we haven't lost sight of and won't lose sight of, and should, I think what I've garnered and been satisfied on my end from the treasurer is that contingency is available should we incur that real life additional cost. If it's something that council wants to beef up or add an additional amount to the operating budget, I don't think you're going to have staff saying no in terms of an allowance for that should we move down that path. But at this point, it would be tough for us to say yay or nay whether we're actually going to proceed with it without having that analysis done. I think my final comment is, again, if committee wants to add, and I'm not sure this is what I was hearing from Councillor Rawson or not, but if council wants to add a specific amount to the budget to account for this, should it be something we proceed with, then I think staff can take that direction.
You're satisfied at the discussion? Good, thank you. Are there further discussions in reference to operating? Councillor Levy.
Yes, thank you very much, Your Worship. Something we talked about a few months back was we actually were sending correspondence through the Ontario Municipal Association regarding council compensation being cut by way of the federal government's proposed new taxation laws, which, and I'm simply looking for information from the CAO to see what further discussion has taken place amongst other CAOs or municipalities, because it looks like councillors will be taking about an $1,800 hit per year, which ends up being a decrease in compensation. I am not sitting here tonight asking for a raise. Please don't misunderstand. I'm looking for information from the CAO about what other communities are. I know for a fact Midland has already dealt with it by increasing their compensation in anticipation of this. I hope I'm correct on that. But anyway, perhaps the CAO can update us on what municipalities are doing and what perhaps the association is doing.
Thank you, Mr. CAO.
Through you, Madam Chair, just looking for some clarity. Is this the 1/3 tax exempt proposal that the government came out with? I'm sorry, I don't have it on the tip of my tongue. I believe, and I'll just have to double check. I'll report back to committee, but I know it was raised at some point here at this table, and unless my recollection serves me incorrectly, I believe we were to send a letter in support. But again, I'll report back, or in support of AMO's motion, which was against the proposal. But let me report back if that's not a problem. I don't think, without doing a lot of analysis, I don't think we're probably in a position to amend, and I think I'm hearing that that's not what you're suggesting in terms of the budget itself. But I can certainly report back.
Just basically want to taking the opportunity to shed some light on the situation and how it affects us and what you're hearing from other CAOs. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Just to follow up on that, just for the CEO, and I'll find out, I caught an article the other day in Municipal Network, and so what a couple of councils have done is actually, the issue is your net pay. Because right now you get a third of your compensation is tax-free, so your net pay is a little higher. So some municipalities, for a CEO, is actually what they've done is they've actually adjusted the gross pay, so the net stays the same. So that's one option. I don't know what Midland did, but I've seen that as well. So I'll flip you that article as well, so you can follow up with that municipality.
Thank you for bringing that item forward. I would ask if there's no other further items in reference the treasurer to recount and give us a review of some of the discussion that's taken place here this evening. Well, just a quick review.
Through you, Madam Chair, I have no changes directed to the operating budget.
Thank you.
I will outline 5 changes that we've discussed or I've noticed that I'm going to make changes to. Number 1, I mentioned the library board had directed the removal of their 2019 capital project for $1,978.
Thank you.
So I'll be making that change. Number 2, I did notice, and this is just a typo, in the capital plan, there are 2 M898 projects, so I'm just going to correct one of those identification numbers. Change number 3 relates to Council's direction to leave Navy Lane project in the 2018 capital budget. I will be changing that to debt. A portion of it to debt. Number 4, I will be moving the amphitheater from 2018 back to 2020. And number 5, I'll be adding a new capital project in 2019 for an outdoor rink, totaling $135,500.
Thank you for that review. Are there further questions and members of council? Seeing none, we've come to the point where question period from the media. Oh, we have to move? Oh, the recommendation, okay, that our 2018 budget, draft number 2, and related budget documents be received for information and discussion, and that staff amend the 2018 budget as directed. Moved by Councillor LaRue, seconded by Councillor Mayette. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, Council. Question period from the media. If there is none. Question period from the public. Yes, Mr. Cadeau.
I would like to clarify, this Main Street construction, it's the largest construction in our terms, right?
Yep.
That this town has undertaken. When I listened to council, they said they were going to put all effort. That's all hands on deck, all financial revenue towards this project. But yet, Gary said to us last week that he believes that each one of us should look after our own affairs and not worry about others. Were you talking directly as I should worry about my own affairs, or as the general town of Penetang should look after our affairs? Maybe the finances that are available should be directed to our own needs and not the needs of others. So as we look at spending in this budget, is our total budget direction is to make sure that this Main Street construction goes off without a hitch? Because a lot of us are concerned on this, and it seems like a liberal phrase I'll use, and it goes with the wind. So every time I hear a conversation about budgeting or financing, it seems like it's blowing in the wind on whatever needs to be done. And I have to throw in the word.
Thank you for your comment. I think his worship is prepared to answer your
I'll just
question.
answer the first part. So my
Yes.
suggestion to all our store owners, and it remains the same, is to look at your business. Understand what it takes to keep your business doors open when that big yellow steam shovel's in front of that. Once you've identified your plan, whatever that plan was come and talk to Brian about that plan so we understand that. Once you understand your own business, then you can look at your neighbors and understand their business as well. But I'm saying to every business, and I can tell you that when my wife and I had our store down on Main Street, we had plans for the construction. We looked at what it would take to get business in our back door, what would it take to expand that door to get an accessible ramps in there, what would it take for parking. We had that conversation. So we looked at our building and said, what would it take to keep that store open at that particular time? So my best advice I still offer to all our merchants and to yourself as well is look at your business and think about when that yellow steam shovel's in front of my business for a day, an hour, or two, or a week, or whatever that period is, what does it take to keep your business flowing and those doors open, and share that with our staff so that we've got that, we capture that, and we can understand that need as we construct. That was my advice, and still my advice.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. CAO.
Madam Chair, if I might just, not on that particular question, but I meant to mention something earlier, and I'll be real quick. And it was raised earlier, with respect to Tiny Township's contribution to our rink, just to update committee, I have had conversations with, both Carrie and I had conversations with the treasurer and CAO at Tiny Township. I know his worship had a conversation with his worship over in Tiny Township. The quick update is I have drafted, and if it's not been sent today, it will be tomorrow. It was drafted yesterday, and so a letter is going off to Tiny Township with an immediate request of $25,000. Staff over there have identified they will support the request. They more or less have suggested that they believe, that they certainly don't want to be in the facilities management business. I've also made it very clear that the goal, the immediate without batting an eye request is $25,000, but that we will be undertaking a more thorough review prior to next year's budget deliberations, and staff over there certainly are well aware of that. So it will be presented to their council for discussion.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Rawson?
Yeah, just a clarity, if the CEO can help me. Is it 25 in addition to the 19, or is it 25 new dollars?
Through you, Madam Chair, it's to bring the $19,000 to the $25,000 level. That's how I understood. That's how I understood committee's request was sending an invoice for $25,000 as opposed to the 19. What I can say is they contribute to 2 other municipalities in Simcoe County for arena contributions, and $25,000 would be their largest contribution. I'm not suggesting that it shouldn't be more, but I'm just suggesting, to put things into perspective, they would prefer a more thorough analysis at a staff level before they consider something above and beyond the 25.
Thank you very much. If there's no further discussion, I would ask for adjournment. Moved by Councillor LaRue, seconded by Councillor Rawson. Thank you very much to the public for your patience this evening, and thank you to council. All in favor? Good.